Dodge has built some of the strangest muscle cars ever, with wild designs, unexpected engines, and ideas that never took off. From forgotten prototypes to rare factory experiments, these 15 weird Dodge muscle cars will surprise you. Number 15, 1967 Dodge Coronet WO23. This car is weird. And not just in a small way, it's the kind of weird that makes you stop and wonder what Dodge was thinking back in the year 1967. This is the Dodge Coronet WO23, a car that looked like a regular old sedan, but was secretly built to tear up the drag strip. It had one job: go fast in a straight line. And to do that, Dodge made some really unusual choices. First, the brakes. Normally cars have bigger brakes in the front because that's where most of the stopping power happens. But not this one. Dodge actually put smaller 10-inch drum brakes in the front and bigger 11-inch ones in the back. Sounds backward, right? But for drag racing, this was smart. The smaller front brakes made the car lighter, and the bigger rear brakes helped press the tires harder into the ground for better traction. Then, the weight-saving tricks. The suspension wasn't the same heavy-duty setup found in other powerful Coronets. Instead, Dodge went for the lightest parts possible, borrowing pieces from their basic Slant 6 engine models. The front sway bar? Gone. The front torsion bars? Thinner than usual. Even the battery was a massive 90-pound chunk moved to the trunk to help push the rear tires into the pavement. Now, the engine. It had a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, making 425 horsepower. But here's the catch: Dodge didn't tune it up for racing. Instead, they gave racers the standard street version and let them modify it later. The only real factory upgrades were a transistorized ignition and a set of hooker headers, which came in the trunk for the owner to install. The carburetors were also a bit sneaky. NHRA racing rules forced Dodge to keep the normal inline dual-carb setup, instead of the high-performance cross-ram intake. But to squeeze out more power, Dodge had racer Arlen Vanke modify them to flow 750 cubic feet per minute instead of 625. Only 55 of these cars were built, and all of them rolled off the assembly line on Sunday, February 12, 1967. Today, they are rare and worth way more than their regular Coronet RT cousins. Number 14, 1969 Dodge Dart GTS 440. Dodge had already packed big engines into small cars before, but in the year 1969, they pushed the idea even further with the Dodge Dart GTS 440. It was not just another muscle car, it was a ridiculous experiment that somehow worked. The car was built with a 440 cubic inch V8 engine, the same one used in bigger Dodge Charger RT and Coronet RT models. But unlike those heavier cars, the Dart was much smaller and lighter. That meant way more power than the chassis probably should have handled, but Dodge went ahead anyway. There was no manual transmission option. Dodge only offered the 3-speed automatic because trying to shift gears with so much power and such a short wheelbase would have been a nightmare. Even with the automatic, the car still struggled to keep traction, making it a handful on the streets. On paper, it was a basic muscle car. It had bucket seats, a center console, and even a heater and radio. So it was not stripped down like some of Dodge's other drag-ready cars, but all the power was shoved into a small body that originally came from an economy car design. The weight distribution was not ideal, with more weight up front, making the car tricky to handle at high speeds. The car had a specific code to prove it was the real deal. The 5th spot in the vehicle identification number had to be the letter M, which stood for Special Order V8. The fender tag needed to have code A13, confirming the 440 conversion package. Stock models came with a full dual exhaust system and chrome exhaust tips, but many owners tossed those out and installed massive aftermarket headers. The problem was space. There was barely enough room in the engine bay, so the headers had to exit through the inner fender walls before curving down. That meant cutting big holes into the car, just to fit the exhaust system. Dodge built 640 of these cars, but a huge number of them were raced hard and wrecked. Today, only about 1/3 of them still exist, and collectors are willing to spend more than $60,000 to own one. Number 13, 1970 Dodge Challenger TA. Dodge needed a real pony car to compete in the Trans-American Sedan Championship, and in the year 1970 they finally had one, the Dodge Challenger TA. But instead of just making a track car, Dodge decided to build an even wilder version for the street. The racing version used a 305 cubic inch engine, but the streetcar came with a 340 cubic inch V8. It had three two-barrel carburetors, sitting on an aluminum intake manifold. Dodge rated it at 290 horsepower, but in reality it was closer to 350. To feed the engine, the car had a huge scoop built into its fiberglass hood, held down by pins. There was something strange about how the exhaust system worked. Instead of running straight back like a normal car, the pipes ran to the muffler under the trunk, then turned around and exited in front of the rear wheels. The tailpipes even had flared tips, which made the car look even more aggressive. Buyers had options for a 3-speed automatic or a 4-speed manual transmission. Gear ratios could be 3.55 to 1 or 3.90 to 1. The car had power or manual steering, and the front disc brakes were standard. The suspension was upgraded with stronger parts and a unique setup that raised the rear end slightly. The different suspension setup had a purpose. It allowed the car to fit wider rear tires. The front tires were E60 by 15, while the rear tires were G60 by 15, making it one of the first production cars to have different sizes front and back. That extra height at the rear, combined with thick side stripes, bold lettering, and a black spoiler, gave the Challenger TA a very aggressive stance. It was not a great race car, though. It did not win much in the Trans-American Sedan Championship, and on the street it struggled with sharp turns, understeering badly in fast corners. But in a straight line, the Challenger TA was quick, running the quarter mile in the mid-14-second range. Dodge built exactly 2,399 of these cars. One of the rarest was painted rally red and came with a factory gator grain vinyl roof, making it a true one-of-a-kind. Have you ever driven any of these weird muscle cars? If so, what is your experience? Comment on us, like us, and subscribe to the channel. Number 12, 1970, Dodge Super Bee 426 Hemi. Dodge had a budget-friendly way for people to own a Hemi-powered car, and that was the Super Bee. It never sold as well as the Roadrunner, but in the year 1970, Dodge still managed to sell 15,506 of them. Most had a 383 cubic inch engine, but a few lucky ones came with the powerful 426 cubic inch Hemi V8. Only 36 Super Bees were built with the 426 Hemi engine that year. That is an incredibly small number, making this one of the rarest muscle cars of its time. The high cost of the Hemi option scared away most buyers, which is why Dodge sold even fewer in the next year, just 22. In total, across 4 years, Dodge only made 349 Super Bees with this engine. Finding one today is nearly impossible, and if you do, it is going to cost a fortune. These cars can go for over $200,000 at public auctions, especially if they are in perfect condition. But there are also tricked-out versions made to look like a real Hemi Super Bee, and some of them are very convincing. A well-done version might have the same bright yellow paint, the dual-scoop hood with Hemi badges, and even the black rear wing. But if it is a Restomod, it could be hiding a completely different engine. Some modern versions use a 392 cubic inch Hemi V8 instead of the original 426. That newer engine makes around 485 horsepower, which is actually more than the old Hemi ever did. Looking closer, you might spot other differences. Some of these cars sit lower and have modern headlights and even digital gauges inside. The transmission might be a 5-speed manual instead of the original 4-speed. Even the rear end could have a different gear setup, like a 3.91 ratio. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Mopar made so many similar-looking cars that it was hard to tell them apart. The Super Bee, Charger, Roadrunner, and GTX all shared a lot of the same bodywork. The biggest differences were usually in the grills, taillights, and some minor styling touches. Number 11, 1971, Dodge Charger RT 440 plus 6. Dodge came up with a fresh look for the Charger in the year 1971. It had a brand new body design with a split front grille, and the headlights were no longer hidden unless you paid extra. The Charger RT was still the high-performance version, and it came with some serious power. This version of the Charger had a base engine of 440 cubic inches with a single 4-barrel carburetor that made 375 horsepower. But there was an even stronger option called the 6-pack. This version had 3 2-barrel carburetors, boosting power to 390 horsepower. It could be paired with either a 4-speed manual transmission or a 3-speed automatic. The Charger was built on the same platform as the Plymouth Roadrunner and Dodge Coronet RT, which meant they shared a lot of parts. Even though the outside looked different, The engines, suspension, and many other mechanical pieces were the same. This made it tough to tell these cars apart, unless you knew exactly what to look for. Dodge wanted to keep the Charger exciting, so they introduced a few flashy options. One of them was the Ram Charger hood, which had a scoop that popped up when you pressed a switch inside the car. This lets more air into the engine, helping it run better. Plymouth had a similar feature called the Air Grabber, which was used on the Roadrunner. Performance was still impressive in this last strong year for muscle cars. A Charger with the 440 cubic inch Magnum engine and automatic transmission could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds and finish the quarter mile in 14.8 seconds at 95.7 miles per hour. That was not as fast as some of the older muscle cars, but it still packed a punch. Despite all this power, muscle cars were starting to lose their appeal. Insurance costs were rising, gas prices were climbing, and the economy was getting worse. Dodge sold over 60,000 Chargers in 1971, but only about 10% were high-performance models like the RT. Times were changing, and these big, powerful cars were becoming harder to justify. Number 10, 1976, Dodge Aspen RT. The 1976 Dodge Aspen RT had a strange place in car history. It followed Dodge's successful Dart, but never quite reached the same level. It sold in huge numbers at first, helped by winning Motor Trend's Car of the Year award, with over 500,000 cars sold in the first year. But despite the strong start, things went downhill quickly. This car came from a time when emissions rules were tightening and car companies were struggling to adjust. The Dodge Aspen RT had its share of problems. Rust showed up way too soon, ignition systems failed, and overall quality was a mess. It ended up being one of the most recalled cars ever, until General Motors' X cars arrived to take that title. On top of that, Chrysler was already having money troubles, making buyers nervous about getting one of these cars. Even though most people forgot about the Aspen over time, there were some versions that stood out. Dodge brought back the RT badge for its sportier Aspen coupes, but sporty was a bit of an exaggeration. The best engine option was a 360 cubic inch V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, making only 170 horsepower. There was also a 318 cubic inch V8 with a 2-barrel carburetor, but that was even weaker. These cars looked fast with their bold graphics, but in reality, they were just comfortable highway cruisers. Dodge tried to make the RT package exciting by adding details that looked good on paper. It came with white letter tires, a stronger suspension, striped graphics, and a blacked-out grille. Buyers could pay extra for the decor group, which added dual mirrors and trim rings. If that was not enough, the RT Super Pack had even more: an air dam, a trunk spoiler, louvers on the quarter windows, and fender flares. When the Aspen got a mild update in 1978, Dodge gave the RT model a red-painted grille, dual mirrors, and new stripes. That year, they also made around 400 special kit cars with fender flares and steel wheels, meant to have a NASCAR-inspired look. By 1979, the Super Pack features were just included in the RT package, but at that point, fewer people cared. The Aspen RT started out as a big deal, but it quickly became just another odd car of its time. Number 9, 1977, Dodge Monaco 400.
Thank you, Dodge Monaco, for the style and size that are just right for today.
The 1977 Dodge Monaco 400 was an odd car from a confusing time. It was supposed to be a mid-size family car, but Dodge treated it like a temporary fix until a new model arrived. It had the same basic body structure as the older Dodge Coronet, with a few changes to make it look fresh. However, the rear design, interior, and most other parts were straight from the Coronet. Dodge tried to give it an updated front with stacked square headlights, which did make it look better, but it was clear this car was already outdated compared to its competition. Even though the Monaco was meant to be a budget-friendly car, it was still offered with a surprisingly big engine. The 400 cubic inch V8 made 190 horsepower, which was strong for its time. This was one of the few cars left that still had a big block V8, a type of engine that was disappearing due to fuel economy concerns. To help with emissions and gas mileage, Chrysler used its electronic lean burn system, which adjusted the spark timing through a basic computer. It was not the most reliable system, but it helped keep the big engine around a little longer. Dodge offered different engine choices for people who wanted better fuel efficiency. There were two versions of the 360 cubic inch small block V8, making either 155 or 170 horsepower. a smaller 318 cubic inch V8 made between 140 and 145 horsepower. For those who really wanted to save gas, Dodge also had a 225 cubic inch straight six-cylinder engine that made only 110 horsepower. It was slow, but it was cheap to run. Even though it was called a mid-size car, the Monaco 400 was big enough that it became Dodge's unofficial full-size model in 1978. It was available as a two-door coupe, a four-door sedan, and a five-door station wagon. There was even a fancy version called the Brougham, which had a soft, comfortable cloth interior that felt more like a Chrysler than a Dodge. The Monaco 400 was not exciting, but for a short time, it was one of the last big-engine cars people could still buy. Number 8, 1980 Dodge Mirada CMX. The 1980 Dodge Mirada CMX was an odd car from a strange time. Chrysler had just made it smaller than its older models, but it was still big and heavy. Gas prices were rising, car loans had sky-high interest rates, and Chrysler itself was struggling to survive. The Mirada and its twin, the Chrysler Cordoba, were supposed to be stylish, personal luxury cars, but they did not sell well at all. That is a shame because they were not bad cars, just unlucky ones. This particular 1980 Dodge Mirada CMX, listed for sale, looks to be in great shape with only 87,749 miles. It has been bid up to $3,350 so far, which is not much for a car in this condition. It has a 318 cubic inch V8 engine with a two-barrel carburetor, which means it was not very fast. It also was not great on gas. The Mirada got 10 miles per gallon in the city and 12 miles per gallon on the highway when driven carefully. That was better than some older Chrysler models, but still not good. Rain was another problem. The car slid around easily and locked up its brakes with just a little pressure on the pedal. On top of that, it had an electronic ignition control box that liked to fail at the worst times. When it did, the car would run rough and melted plastic would drip from the box like it was falling apart from the inside. These were the kinds of issues that made people choose other cars instead. The inside of this Mirada has vinyl seats that have held up well over time. It has a center console with a floor shifter, along with an AM and FM radio with a CB radio built in. That is something rarely seen. The windows are manual crank style, and it does not look like it has power door locks. The air conditioning has been updated to a more modern system, which is nice. One of the strangest details is the soft rubber pieces on the back corners. Most of these rotted away years ago, but on this car, they are still in perfect condition. They were impossible to replace back then, but today, someone could probably 3D print a set. Number 7, 1984. Dodge Daytona Turbo Z. The 1984 Dodge Daytona Turbo Z was Chrysler's attempt at making a front-wheel drive muscle car. Yes, a muscle car that pulls instead of pushes. It was a bold move, and Chrysler was confident it would shake up the car world. They even said it could take on the Porsche 944. That is a wild claim, but Chrysler really believed in this car. Chrysler gave the Daytona Turbo Z a turbocharged 135 cubic inch four-cylinder engine that made 142 horsepower. It had port fuel injection and 7.5 pounds per square inch of boost, which helped it reach 60 miles per hour in 8.2 seconds and run the quarter mile in 16.4 seconds. The top speed? 128 miles per hour. For a front-wheel drive car from the 80s, that was impressive. It had enough power to spin its tires like crazy, and thanks to a special hydraulic engine mount, it did not shake itself apart. The driving experience was a mix of good and strange. The steering was quick and had just the right amount of effort, making it easy to control. The Daytona handled well, with very little body roll, and stayed balanced through turns. It was not as sharp as a Chevrolet Camaro Z28, but it held its own. Chrysler even tested it on a racetrack, which was unusual for them. The car performed well, taking turns smoothly and staying stable even at high speeds. Inside, the Daytona Turbo Z was a mix of futuristic and questionable choices. The dashboard was filled with electronic gauges, but they were not easy to read. The shifter felt sticky and imprecise. The brake pedal had a long travel distance and felt soft. The emergency brake was a foot pedal instead of a hand lever, which annoyed some drivers. Chrysler also tried to make the exhaust sound like a big American V8, but it just ended up with a weird, droning noise. One thing Chrysler got right was the aerodynamics. The drag coefficient was 0.35, better than most cars at the time. The seats were designed with inflatable lumbar and thigh supports, making them more comfortable than those in a Chevrolet Camaro Z28 or a Ford Mustang GT. Chrysler wanted this car to be a game changer, and in some ways, it was. Number 6, 1986. Dodge Omni G LHS. The 1986 Dodge Omni G LHS is one weird little machine. It is a boxy hatchback with the heart of a race car. A car that looks like it should be delivering pizzas, but instead burns rubber like a muscle car. Built by Carroll Shelby himself, only 500 of these hopped-up Omnis ever existed. And yes, it was called GLHS, which stood for Goes Like Hellsmore. That name alone tells you everything. Now moving on to what makes this thing so odd. First, the engine. It had a turbocharged 135 cubic inch four-cylinder, making 175 horsepower and the same amount of torque. That does not sound crazy now, but back then, for a small front-wheel drive hatchback, it was wild. It had a 5-speed manual gearbox, and if you floored it, the front wheels would fight for control. Torque steer was part of the fun. Next, the suspension setup was not what you would expect from an economy car. Shelby threw on Coney adjustable shocks, stiffer springs, and wider 15-inch alloy wheels, wrapped in performance tires. The car sat lower in the back by about half an inch, making it look even more aggressive. The handling? Sharp. The ride? Rough. This thing was stiff, bouncing over potholes like a skateboard with an attitude. Inside, it was straight out of the 1980s. Gray cloth seats, crank windows, and a radio. No fancy tech, just the basics. But it did have a numbered plaque on the dashboard, reminding you this was not just any Omni. It was number 250 out of 500. On the road, the GLHS was shockingly quick. It could hit 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds and had a top speed of 130 miles per hour. That meant it could outrun many V8 cars of its time, all while looking like a grocery getter. This car made no sense. It was fast, rough, and ridiculous, and that is exactly why it is unforgettable. Number 5, 1989, Dodge Dakota Sport Convertible. The 1989 Dodge Dakota Sport Convertible was an unusual experiment that did not end well. It was a pickup truck, but with a soft-top roof that could be folded down like a convertible car. It was the first of its kind in almost 60 years, and Dodge really believed it would sell well. But as it turned out, people who loved trucks did not want a convertible, and people who loved convertibles did not want a truck. At that time, pickup trucks were more popular than ever. Meanwhile, convertible cars were making a comeback, and Chrysler, the company that owned Dodge, had already revived the convertible market with the 1982 Chrysler LeBaron. So why not mix these two ideas together? That was Dodge's thinking when they turned their mid-size pickup, the Dakota, into a convertible. For 1989, Dodge offered the convertible Dakota in the Sport trim, which was already a premium version of the truck. It had sporty stripes, a black painted grille, cast aluminum wheels, and a 238 cubic inch V6 engine with 125 horsepower. Buyers could choose between rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, with the latter costing a few $1,000s more. The soft top was manually operated, and when folded down, it sat on top of the truck bed instead of disappearing into it. Dodge thought this truck would attract two kinds of buyers: young, stylish drivers, and older, wealthy people looking for a fun weekend vehicle. They expected to sell between 2,500 and 5,000 units in the first year, with hopes of building up to 30,000 annually. Instead, they barely sold 2,842 trucks in the first year, and in 1990, sales dropped to just 909. It was clear the idea had failed. By the end of 1990, Dodge gave up and discontinued the convertible Dakota. Today, it remains a weird and rare piece of automotive history, an oddball truck that just never found its audience. Number 4, 1991, Dodge Spirit RT. The 1991 Dodge Spirit RT was a strange car in all the best ways. It was a plain-looking four-door sedan, but Dodge claimed it was the fastest sedan made in America. That was a bold statement, especially for a car that looked like something your neighbor's dad would drive. But surprisingly, Dodge was not joking. This car had a powerful 135 cubic inch turbocharged engine, producing 224 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque. The engine had a special 16-valve, dual overhead cam head designed by Lotus, beating out Maserati and Hans Hermann in a design competition. That meant this seemingly normal family sedan could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.8 seconds. That was as quick as some sports cars at the time. Unlike most sedans, the Spirit RT only came with a 5-speed manual transmission. No automatic option, no easy cruising. You had to shift gears yourself. The transmission was built by Chrysler's New Process Gear division, with a gear set from Getrag. The brakes were serious too, with vented 4-wheel disc brakes and optional anti-lock brakes. It was only available in 2 colors, flame red or white. The outside looked mostly like a regular Spirit, but there were a few small differences. It had a special front bumper, fog lights, a small spoiler, and decals that said DOHC intercooled multivalve on the doors. Even the wheels were body-colored 15-inch alloy wheels, with snowflake-style spokes, wrapped in performance tires. Inside, it had sport bucket seats, full gauges including an oil pressure gauge and voltmeter, and a simple but functional dashboard. At first glance, it was nothing fancy, but everything was built for performance. Dodge only made 1,208 of these cars for the United States in 1991, with 774 in red and 434 in white. It was fast, rare, and weird. Even Motor Trend magazine picked it as the domestic sports sedan of the year, beating the Ford Taurus SHO. Number 3, 1992, Dodge Stealth RT Twin Turbo. The 1992 Dodge Stealth RT Twin Turbo was a strange mix of futuristic ideas and old-school muscle. It had all-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering, and even adjustable suspension. But at the same time, it had a cramped cabin and a dashboard that left drivers frustrated. It was trying to be everything at once, and that made it one of the weirdest cars of its time. This car was powered by a 181 cubic inch twin-turbo V6 engine, paired with a 5-speed manual transmission. It was not just fast, it was shockingly fast for the early 3000 VR4 twin, but still a heavy car for a sports coupe. Yet, with all that weight, it could move like nothing else. It had pop-up headlights, a unique front bumper, and a crescent-shaped rear spoiler. Unlike the Mitsubishi version, it skipped the active aerodynamics, meaning no automatically adjusting spoilers. But it still had enough quirks to make it stand out. The electronically controlled suspension had small, bump-like covers on the hood to make space for its components. Inside, the story got even stranger. The seats were comfortable, and the overall design was clean, but there were problems. Some dashboard controls were nearly impossible to reach. The turn signal indicators were way too bright at night, but the climate control screen was too dim during the day. The worst part? Headroom. If you were tall, you had to lean the seat back just to fit in. Despite its weird flaws, the Stealth RT Twin Turbo had a serious performance. The automatic climate control, sport or touring exhaust settings, and electronic windows made it feel advanced. Even with its quirks, it was an unforgettable car. Big, fast, and completely over the top. Number 2, 1987, Dodge Shelby Charger, GLHS. The 1987 Dodge Shelby Charger GLHS was a car that did not care about being refined or smooth. It was loud, rough, and sometimes felt like it was shaking apart, but it was also shockingly quick. It was number 591 out of only 1,000 ever built, making it a rare machine with an attitude. This car had a 135 cubic inch turbocharged and intercooled 4-cylinder engine, paired with a manual transmission. Shelby boosted the power to 175 horsepower and increased torque to 175 pound-feet at just 2,200 revolutions per minute. With that setup, it could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.7 seconds and hit a top speed of 134 miles per hour. It had a black paint job with Shelby decals and a numbered plaque on the glove box. The seats were embroidered with the Shelby name, and the interior had a mix of simple features like manual crank windows, a louvered rear window cover, and an AM/FM radio. It also came with Goodyear tires, a unique leather-wrapped steering wheel, and a leather-wrapped shift knob. Driving it was an experience unlike any other. The shifter felt stubborn, the clutch was heavy, and the engine made so much noise that everything inside seemed to rattle. Even the coat hook screw came loose in some test drives. Under hard acceleration, it had serious torque steer, and under braking, the rear wheels locked up too early. Yet, once the turbo kicked in, all of that was forgotten. Shelby also made some changes to the suspension, adding adjustable Coney shocks and tweaking the alignment. Still, for the price, nothing else could match its raw power and fun factor. It was rough, unpolished, and completely unpredictable. But that was what made it so unforgettable. Number 1, 1990, Dodge Daytona, IROCRT. The 1990 Dodge Daytona IROCRT was an odd mix of big ideas and strange decisions. Chrysler put this concept car on display at auto shows, showing off features that never actually made it to production. It had an all-glass roof and an all-wheel drive system, but neither of those ended up on the Daytonas people could actually buy. What did carry over were the fixed headlights, the rounded one-piece taillights, the crosshair grille, and the more integrated side ground effects. The engine was a 135 cubic inch turbocharged inline four-cylinder with a variable nozzle turbo. That setup gave it a full turbo boost in just 2.2 seconds. The claimed numbers were 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.1 seconds and a top speed of 140 miles per hour. The suspension had an independent setup in the front and a trailing arm design in the back. The tires were massive, sized 10.8 inches wide with an aspect ratio of 40, mounted on 17-inch by 9.5-inch cast aluminum wheels. These were Goodyear experimental tires, which sounded cool but were never used on the final version. Only the IROC RT model got the turbocharged 3 version of the engine, making 224 horsepower. It only came with a 5-speed manual transmission. Other versions of the Daytona had different engines, including a 153 cubic inch 4-cylinder and a V6 option. The turbo models were quick but loud, and the ride quality was stiff enough to make city driving feel like an endurance test. So, which car did you find the weirdest or unique? Tell us in the comments below.